Every war in history, we picture it as years of marching, trenches and sieges, months of blood, endless. But there is one war on the record books that ended before its own soldiers had even finished breakfast, before lunch, before the telegram announcing it even reached the newspapers. This is the story of the shortest war ever fought, and it lasted 38 minutes. The Anglo-Zanzibar War.
To understand this war, you have to understand the island it happened on. Zanzibar, a tiny, sun-soaked island off the coast of East Africa. In the 19th century, it was one of the richest places on earth, not because of gold, because of clove and spice, and above all, ivory. For decades, Zanzibar existed in a strange shadow. Officially, it was an independent sultanate ruled by an Arab sultan and his dynasty. But in practice, it answered to a quiet, unshakable giant, the British Empire. Britain controlled Zanzibar's foreign affairs, its finances, its fate. For years, this arrangement worked, until the morning of August 25th, 1896, when everything changed. Sultan Hamad died, suddenly.
And here is where the story snaps, because the Sultan's nephew, a young and ambitious man named Khalid bin Bargash, decided he was not going to wait for anyone's permission. Hours after his uncle's death, before the mourning had even begun, Khalid marched into the royal palace and crowned himself Sultan of Zanzibar. He was not next in line. He was not chosen. He simply took it. And more importantly, Khalid was a nationalist. He hated the British influence over his island. He wanted Zanzibar to answer to itself again. Britain gave Khalid an ultimatum: surrender the palace and step down, or face the consequences. Khalid laughed it off. "My palace," he said, "is bigger than you think. The British would never risk starting a war over a little island."
The British did not bluff. They sent ships, 5 warships of the Royal Navy, heavy guns and modern ironclads anchored in the harbor, all pointing at the Sultan's palace. They set a deadline: 9 o'clock in the morning. If the palace flag was still flying by 9, they would open fire. Khalid's men numbered around 3,000. They were brave, they were loyal, but they had almost no modern guns, no ships that could match an ironclad, and no navy at all. 9 o'clock came. The palace flag was still flying. The British commander looked at his watch, and he gave the order. And then it all happened at once. At exactly 9:02, the first shells crashed into the palace. The Sultan's flag was shot to pieces within minutes. Khalid's men had exactly one modern ship, a royal yacht named the Glasgow. She opened fire on the British. Brave. Doomed. The British answered, and within seconds the Glasgow was burning, sinking in the shallows. Meanwhile, the palace was reduced to a ruin, shell after shell. And then, at 9:40, just 38 minutes after the first shot, the guns fell silent. The war was over. Khalid bin Bargash had escaped, slipping out through a back entrance of the burning palace, and fled to the neighboring German colony. The British put a price on his head. They never caught him.
And now, the part nobody tells you about. For decades, this war, 38 minutes, about 500 people dead, was barely a footnote. But there is a darker, stranger ending. In 2011, a flag was put up for auction in London. It was the very flag that had been flying over Zanzibar when the war ended, torn to shreds by British shell fire. It sold to a private collector for a fortune. Why would anyone want a torn flag from a forgotten war that lasted 38 minutes?
Because history remembers the wars that take years. But the wars that end in a morning, they get lost. They become curiosities, museum pieces, trivia. Khalid died in exile in 1927, still technically a sultan of nothing. 3,000 defenders, a proud island, a man who wanted to be free, and a war that was over before lunch. That is the story. If you made it this far, drop a comment. What's the shortest war you have ever lost? And subscribe so you don't miss the next story that history tried to forget.